Hello everyone, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Let's give this a second to make sure everything is up and running. Okay, here we are, yes. Good evening. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you very much for joining me for another live stream. Thanks for everyone who's been waiting and our regular viewers. I see many people who are regularly here with us, so thank you very much for joining regularly. For all of you who are new to my live streams and new subscribers and members, firstly, thank you very much and welcome to the live stream. I do these live streams primarily for the subscribers and members and viewers to discuss additional topics to the ones that I speak about in my videos, and primarily to open the space for you to obviously share your thoughts, ask questions. You obviously support me and I try and support you as well as much as possible. With regards to what I wanted to talk about tonight, and I would appreciate if, because I will be addressing the questions and kind of most relevant comments after the initial talk about tonight's subject, if you wouldn't mind highlighting any potential questions as advised by some of our kind moderators. That would make it easier for me to address them, and it would be easier for the viewers who would be watching this live stream after it's saved on my YouTube channel. So tonight in this live stream, firstly, if you haven't watched my previous video, I'd recommend you go and watch it after this video. I'll give you a bit of a brief about it if you wanted to ask any related questions, because I spoke about a lot of important developments when it comes to this. The first one is obviously the latest upgrades from the ground in Gaza, the resistance, what Israel is doing. That's number one. The second thing is the massive escalation in Lebanon. Hezbollah took down a Hermes UAV, which I didn't really probably speak about in that video. I just mentioned some of their deeper attacks into Israel, but they also downed a very large UAV, 15-meter wingspan. Israel conducted the deepest attack into Lebanon today in Baalbek Valley. That's towards the eastern part of Lebanon, heading towards Syria. I also spoke about Netanyahu telling off the head of the Mossad and a couple of other things. So head off to watch it after this live stream. And obviously, if you already did and you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to clarify anything for you and address these things afterwards. The two things that I want to talk about tonight is number one, obviously Aaron Bushnell, the active duty member of the US Army who set himself alight, killed himself eventually. He was declared dead in the hospital after a few hours. And the second thing is Yoav Gallant and his statement regarding Lebanon. He's saying that Lebanon is separate from Gaza. So if anything happens with Gaza, Lebanon is not in the picture. But we'll start off with Aaron Bushnell. So Aaron Bushnell, he was live streaming on Twitch, I think. He was recording himself saying that, I'm not gonna continue to support this genocide, fully wearing his army uniform. He's in active duty. Obviously, you need to bear in mind, not everyone published confirmations regarding his active duty because it relates to some of the details they have with his family, similar to how Israel doesn't publish the names. Obviously, they have censorship issues in Israel, but I'm just saying in general, they wouldn't publish someone's name and they don't declare them dead unless they have notified the family, and what they define by the family can be different in each country, so people need to bear that in mind. But he was clearly an active US soldier. He's in the uniform. He went to the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., and he set himself on fire. It was a very difficult, very extremely difficult thing to watch. Obviously, we have to watch these things as people who obviously speak about these things. But I think I wanted to highlight a couple of things really just casually with you. My thoughts really about it. Number one, a young white American male serving in the army. That says a lot already. A young white male in America serving in the army. Signaling there are people who are active in the army who have a moral compass and who do not support what their governments are doing. Number one. Second thing, it's a cross-racial, cross-religious thing. Obviously, some people like to put everything in a bubble when it comes to these things. Some people like to speak to you in a tone of, oh, it's a war with Islam only, it's the Jews, it's the this, it's not. Yeah, there are elements that are to do with the belief of people when it comes to this, but when we speak about the conflict, you're talking about a case of basic human rights, basic justice, basic liberty, basic freedom that any decent human being with a sound mind and a functioning moral compass can sympathize with, can support. So clearly, that's the case. You have people who go and serve in the army for good purposes. They want to defend their country. They do it out of goodwill, not realizing what's going on in the background and the fact that their militaries are politicized and are financially motivated and corporate motivated as well. That's very important to highlight. The second thing that we understand from this person and what he did is the level of distress that the governments in many Western countries are putting their citizens in by supporting this genocide. The level of anxiety, the level of distress, the level of disgust, the inner troubles that they put people in to reach such a stage. And you're talking about millions, if not tens of millions of people. And there are people who are responsible for this. The people who are responsible for this are our governments for supporting this genocide and for acting like it's absolutely fine and for demonizing the oppressed and standing with the oppressor and continuing to stand with the oppressor and be complicit in this genocide, in this barbaric crime against all of humanity, but not just the Palestinian people, happening in front of our eyes. And that's something that needs to be spoken about and dealt with. Many people would say it's a long shot, right? But you need to understand that what people go through is very, very distressing. It's like you're witnessing horror 24/7. That's why I recommend people, and I myself don't constantly watch things that are live, raw, unfiltered from the ground. I do, it's not that I don't, but I don't always personally view these things. I wouldn't recommend you would too. And that's not to say you're not sympathizing with anyone. You are. But you also need to think about your well-being. You don't want to reach a stage where you uh, can do something that will harm you, like this young, probably very pure-hearted boy did. What, 25? He's a little boy, right? And the final thing regarding him is the act itself. Because you'll have people saying, he was wrong, he was right. Look, for anyone to, firstly, before making judgments, obviously, there was obviously good intent in terms of the sympathy. Um, Clearly, you're sympathizing with people and you are making a statement against a criminal, a complicit side. That's something noble. However, for someone to reach a stage where they set themselves alight, they need to be in a very, very, very difficult situation. I mean, this reminded me personally of Muhammad al-Bouaziz, and many people set themselves alight as a protest previously. But it resonated with me a lot with the person who started the Arab Spring, Muhammad al-Bouazizi in Tunisia. He was selling groceries in the street and the government wanted to ban him. The guy didn't have money. He couldn't support himself. And as a protest, he went to set himself alight. He sparked a revolution that went across all of the Arab states. Obviously, it has its ups and downs. It had its failures and limited successes and what have you. It had the interventions and all of these things. We know that. But it stemmed out of pain and a sense of hopelessness. A very bad place to be in. I wish he hadn't done it, obviously. And I would obviously recommend anyone, obviously, to even avoid thinking of such a thing. And that's why you wouldn't want to let yourself reach a stage where your sympathy with someone would let you harm yourself or harm any other innocent person. Because you're talking about a situation that is happening and it's very difficult, it's very unfortunate. But we will do what's within our capability to do regarding it. But we obviously pray for him, that Allah, our Creator, have mercy on him. And, our thoughts are with his family, obviously his loved ones. I'm sure many people will be devastated. But obviously, let's hope that not many people put themselves in such a position. And again, it's important to point the finger at the people to blame, the governments in power, the genocide supporters. And I understand why Americans are the most furious people on earth when it comes to this, because they know the level of complicity their government has in support of Israel. Obviously, you have other countries that people are fuming with their governments too, but no country supported Israel as much as the American government did. So that's another contributing factor to why this rage and anger is coming out from American people who are serving their nation. And like I said, potentially with a very good intentions. Many people go and serve for very good intentions, not knowing, who's running the show and why they're doing what they're doing. So may Allah have mercy on him and, grant his family patience. And we hope we don't see something like that again. Because there are many effective ways to make statements, but he definitely did make a statement. But we hope, obviously, we never see any such thing again from anyone. The second thing that I want to talk about is Israel. Obviously, that's a thing we talk about mostly, isn't it? There's so much to talk about. Obviously, I spoke about some of the things in my video previously. That was a little bit longer than usual. I'm trying to lately keep them short because I'm speaking with you on this live stream. But what I want to talk about in this video particularly is Yoav Gallant. So some of you actually made a comment, I think it was yesterday or the day before, about the fact that Yoav Gallant is taking more initiative when it comes to the north, excuse me, and Netanyahu, the south. This thing started a long time ago, by the way, and I spoke about it several weeks back about the fact that Yoav Gallant is slowly detaching himself from Netanyahu in a way to kind of try and solve the problem that they have between them, because they're two at loggerheads. I spoke about how they were at loggerheads before this war started. Netanyahu sacked him during the judicial reform because he was sympathetic more with the Israeli protesters. This carried on with the genocide in Gaza. They weren't seeing head to head. He probably thought, I'd better off speak about Lebanon and stick with the Lebanese borders. And he has. He's been there obviously since October, visiting and going, coming back. And his latest statement, something that resonated with a thing he repeated previously, he said that even if we stop the war with Gaza, the war in Lebanon will not stop. If we stop the war with Lebanon, with Gaza, the war in Lebanon will not stop. These two are different circumstances. There's no longer a case of a ceasefire with Gaza means we're going to stop our attacks in Lebanon, because obviously you have these escalations that are happening. Hezbollah taking down the Hermes, attacking deep into the Galilee, close to Nazareth, and escalating in terms of the level of intensity of attacks on the Galilee. Israel, in return, going far deeper into Lebanon. So there's an argument here that if there were rules of this battle between Israel and Hezbollah, they're being completely broken and shattered to pieces. Israel is way, way deeper than it started initially, very deep into Lebanon. And Hezbollah is upping the ante against Israel. However, there's lots of obviously question marks, and is Israel capable? Well, don't ask me, go ask Israeli intelligence leaders and military leaders that I spoke about in many of my previous videos. One of them, again, was an expert, previous professional in Amman, the Israeli military intelligence directorate. He stated a couple of things to do with Lebanon. One of them was, and I spoke about it in one of the previous videos again, the fact that we haven't finished the job with Gaza. We shouldn't potentially go to a war with Lebanon. And the last thing, he didn't really want to admit it outright, but he said, that's also if there isn't a problem and if there isn't an argument of us being actually able to have two fronts at the same time, hinting that we're not able to have two fronts at the same time. That's a big thing. Also, one very important thing when it comes to the north versus the south, Division 36, that's in the north, is more aligned with the traditional establishment of the army in Israel, whereas the division in Gaza, the Kfir division, is made up of radical settlers aligned with Ben Gvir, Smotrich, and the hardliners in the West Bank, without very intense or hardly, if any at all, military experience with urban warfare. These people are used to bully children and innocent people in the West Bank. Is Israel raising the bar with Lebanon to try and reach some sort of a, giving them an edge with negotiations, putting more pressure before they reach a deal to try and get a deal without going into an actual war? Probably. Are they completely empty? No, because they're still striking in Lebanon. It's not like they stopped and they're going deeper into Lebanon. Hezbollah's admitting that they're losing some of their members, like the attack in Baalbek. They admitted that two Hezbollah members were killed in that in those Israeli strikes. So could escalate, you don't know. And again, when we talk about Israel going deeper and if it's making sense, it's not making sense, it's uh, presuming, right, that the people who are making decisions in Israel politically and militarily have reason. Some of them do more than others, but the decision maker is who? Is Benjamin Netanyahu, and you all know who Benjamin Netanyahu is. So that's the main thing that I want to talk to you about tonight. And I will obviously open the space up for everyone to ask questions. Excuse me in advance if I'm unable to address all of the comments and questions just because of our limit and the level of relevance when it comes to our topic. And if you wouldn't mind just highlighting obviously your comments, sorry, questions, so I can address them more easily. Blank stares question. Some say Russia will not stand by and see Iran destroyed. What would it take for Russia to step in and establish a no-go zone or military counterstrike against IDF attacks? Like I stated previously, it would require Russia to be threatened directly, its national integrity, its inner borders, or them getting intel about a coalition being formed against them, although they already have a coalition against them, not like they don't, but with definite action about to be taken against Russia. With regards to before that, right? Don't forget that there's language between them and the Israelis. Like when it comes to the Golan Heights, their deployment of air surveillance, the air defense attacks, the air defense systems in Syria managed by the Russian army, they regularly send messages to Israel. They send warnings, and Israel knows that. They knows the language with Russia. Obviously, things deteriorated in the past few years. Netanyahu was in a very regular relationship with Putin. I mean, to be fair to Netanyahu, he put in a lot of effort in building a good relationship with Russia. He was there very, very regularly to try and obviously have good relations with them, especially because of the level of involvement in Syria. And Netanyahu knows that Russia is linked with Iran. They know they have a big say when it comes to Syria, but he also knows that Syria is the main lifeline for Hezbollah. So he obviously tried to put a lot of effort when it comes to this, but they already have these small limits. So you might see interactions here or there, altercations, but when it comes to a big war, obviously something needs to cross the line. Probably attacking Iran directly would be that line. Clearly attacking Gaza isn't a red line for Russia. Perhaps attacking other parts wouldn't be a red line. With regards to Iran, you're talking about a bigger problem for Russia. Carla Chapelis, thank you, and Daniela, thank you very much for your supers. And so I'm sorry if I'm missing anyone. And let's go to the next one. Chocolate pudding. Chocolate pudding said, Zaim, can Lebanon cause destruction in Israel similar to what Israel can do to Lebanon? I don't think the Israeli population will tolerate a genuine threat. Keep up the good work, bro. Firstly, thank you so much. Secondly, Hezbollah doesn't have the destruction power that Israeli airdropped bombs have, like a ton a time, right? Saying that they do have way more sophisticated, heavier, more precise weapons than Hamas. So Israel knows that. Can they cause a lot of destruction? Yes, Israel is already warning the population in Israel, governmental bodies telling them prepare for multiple days of no electricity, no water, half-tinned food, prepare medication, prepare for lots of stuff to do with constant outages, shortages in food, in support lines, lifeline, lots of stuff. Good governmental bodies. Okay, I've personally seen some of these letters. They were leaked in social media and accounts and stuff. So they already know that they can cause destruction. You mentioned the last thing. I don't think the Israeli population will tolerate a genuine threat. They're already not tolerating a Hamas threat. They're fleeing the country. Almost 3 million or more outside of Israel. To them, Israel ended already. They're not going to go back to Israel. You've had the Zionist World Zionist Federation. They had a poll that I spoke about, in which 80% of those who left Israel said they're not coming back. So to them, it's not like they haven't tolerated it. They've completely thrown the idea of this Zionist state in the bin. Okay, let's go to the next question. Donal Lawson, assuming Israel permitted the airdrop of food into the south, will there be more, you think? Well, look, they allowed Jordan to have 3 airdrops of aid, 3 airplanes worth that were Jordanian and 1 French. And look, I also spoke about it in my previous video, but I'll repeat here. This is very, very limited. It's exceptionally limited. It's a very, very short. Obviously, it's good. Any aid is good. Look, it's not like, they need anything. Let them get anything they can. Great. But if we're trying to talk about something sustainable, it isn't sustainable. It's very short-term relief. They're throwing it in random places. People need to go and get them. They don't have logistical support on the ground. Some of them are falling in the sea. It's not something that people should be going through to feed their families, going in the cold sea to get some food for a warm meal. That's we should be forcing Israel to open the borders. This is what people should be focusing on, enforcing them to open the borders. That's illegal, it's immoral, it's inhumane, it's satanic what they're doing to the population in Gaza. It's the worst things you can describe in the world. That's what it is. And this is what people should be talking about. Obviously, any airdrop, great, good, perfect, as an extra, not as a thing for people to get used to. We don't want to, make the people used to this being the norm. Have you seen them? Have you seen them going in the cold, swimming to get aid from the sea? Where do we live in? Where do we live in? It's worse than 1984, the Orwellian state, the GSDC state. That's what they are. So I hope that clarifies, and thank you for that question. Also have let's go to Kyle Lynch. What do Israelis want the new government to do? Seems like they want no hostages in Gaza, so they can go and do whatever they want. Sorry, the message skipped. But as far as I understand your question, you're asking about what would Israel do with if they want a new government, but I'll answer both scenarios. If they would want a new government in Israel, they would want to just to get rid of Netanyahu because to them this man has been an obstacle for the past 9 years in Israel, a very big obstacle. The last steady government he had ended in 2015. Then we've had 7 elections altogether in 6-7 years, right? 5 of which were just in 4 years. It's awful. And Israel spent billions. To them, he's an obstacle. So anyone else would probably be more reasonable, get a deal quicker, get some stability back, potentially save Israel. If you're talking about a government in Gaza, if they want a government in Gaza, they obviously want a puppet council. This is what they want. They want to implement in Gaza what they're implementing in the West Bank. Semi-councils with very limited civil service authorities, healthcare, and very minor security stuff, demilitarized, obviously, that they control. They're even proposing this tribal system. Imagine that. Imagine how arrogant and patronizing they are. But both won't be dictated by Israel, I'll tell you now. And hopefully it's the Palestinian people who will be deciding their own destiny, and they should. Let's go to the next question. Daniel Mihet, thank you very much. Anyone sending supers, obviously, and I'm really sorry if I miss anyone. Let's go to the next question. Claire Roper, the right of return for Palestinian people should be on the negotiating list. Thoughts? It, in theory, was always on the negotiating table. I mean, Shtiyi, the prime minister who resigned today, the Palestinian prime minister who resigned today, mentioned the right of return. But what does he mean by the right of return? You have different interpretations of the right of return. The pro-two-state camp, who want a state only in the West Bank and Gaza, they say they have a right to return to Gaza and the West Bank. Well, what if they're from Haifa? What if they're from Jaffa? What if they're from Safad or Asqalan or Sdoud or Bi'r al-Saba or any of it? That's the thing. When you talk about the other camp, led by Hamas, when they say right to return to everywhere in Palestine, in what's modern day Israel. That's their right to return. It's obviously a very important factor when it comes to the negotiations, and it's a very worrying topic for Israel, because obviously they see them as the enemy and they don't have a right to return, and they're not Jewish, and it's only Jewish people who are allowed to perform aliyah, they call it in Hebrew, immigrating to Israel to increase the Jewish population. You're seeing what they're doing. They want to expel the people. It's not something that Israel will take lightly, but obviously ultimately with regards to the destiny of the refugees is something that needs to be spoken about directly with the refugees and representatives by the refugees of Palestinians outside of Palestine, because this is one of the most sacred rights, the right to return, حق العودة. It's one of the most sacred rights, because this is the highlight of what Israel did in 1948. If they killed a lot of people and things went on, things would have been different. They killed a lot of people and they expelled over 1 million between 1948 and 1967, 750,000. In 48, over 300, just over 300,000, or 250,000 in 1967, excluding other smaller ethnic cleansing campaigns. That is part of their ideology, by the way. That's a very foundational thing in Zionism. And if you haven't looked into it, read up about Plan Dalit, right? With regards to expelling the Palestinians. So it is important, but it's also important to go back to, obviously, the Palestinian refugees when it comes to this. Let's go to the next one. And if any of you have any more questions or relevant comments, drop them down now, please, with highlighting them, if you wouldn't mind. I had another question that I just found with regards to obviously the Palestinian Authority Prime Minister resigning. What's going on in the West Bank? That's from Miguel Garcia. In brief, with regards to the Palestinian Prime Minister, Shtiyi, who resigned today, number one, the position of Prime Minister in the Palestinian Authority isn't as important or significant as the position of the President. That's number one. The President, he's still there. Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, he's still there. Muhammad Shtiyi, he's already been in this role for 5 years. So there's an argument that you need a refresher anyway. Thirdly, we're into this genocide, and there are talks in the background about the potential of a unity government between Hamas and Fatah controlling both Gaza and the West Bank. And obviously, when he made his resignation speech, he spoke about the lots of challenges that they had previously, economic challenges, coronavirus, obviously the wars with Israel, the ongoing occupation, the challenges for the Palestinian people, and finally genocide. The genocide to him was a highlight. But again, it wasn't really clear. He didn't say the core thing, in my opinion, as to why he actually resigned, which is primarily to try and get a unity government. That's, it's quite difficult to reach, to say the least. It's a bit complicated, so to speak, because number one, you have a side that's not agreeing to this proposition. Number two, you have two very opposing sides that one of which these, and when I say these sides, I'm talking about traditional PLO led by Fatah and Abu Mazen, and the resistance, Hamas, PIJ, etc. You're talking about a path of I'll do whatever until I get rid of the occupation, anything legit, including armed resistance. And you're talking about another side who took diplomacy as a sacred cow. And they won't go outside the diplomacy scope when it comes to resisting Israel. They'll say it out loud. We are only resisting when it comes to a popular resistant people protesting. And even Abu Mazen, he had statements previously that anyone who launches the rocket at Israel, shoot them, right? So two completely strategic paths. How are they going to reconcile? One side needs to go way more to the other side. Either Hamas will go way more to diplomacy, unlikely, but I'm giving you the option, or Fatah, understanding and comprehending that what we've done in the past 30 years led us to nothing but failure and more misery and more trouble. And it's about time that we don't neglect the resistance. If they do, how are they going to sell it to Israel? You're already talking about a country that's saying we want full security control to the west of the Jordan River. The west of the Jordan River is the West Bank, Israel, and Gaza. How are they going to have any sort of sovereignty when it comes to a state when they are subject to the mercy of Israel? How is that going to happen? It can't happen. It cannot happen. Simple. It's really and truly, it hasn't been more, it's one side against the other, or one side gets it all, than this war. This war is really highlighting that you're talking about a project that is incompatible with humanity and morals and modernity and human rights and freedoms, which is Zionism, a neo-colonial supremacist ethnocracy, a religious supremacy that doesn't work these days, that should end completely. And you're talking about people in Palestine who are looking for their rights, who are looking for rights like you and me in any country, any functioning, decent country, right? When it comes to basic daily life rights, freedom of movement, right to safety, right to healthcare, employment, food, justice, access, right? All of these things, very simple. So that's in brief. Obviously, I added a bit more just to give you, put everything into context. And I'm still not sure exactly how it's going to be evolving unless they both declare with Hamas about this outcome that will potentially come after the announcement of a ceasefire. Amir Dawood, give us your opinion on the personnel carriers from the 60s. That's the thing that I spoke about them in my previous video. Israel is using the M113s, troop carriers, soldier carriers, that have hardly any protection because Hamas and the Palestinian resistance destroyed all of their modern troop carriers. And they stole some, by the way. They didn't tell you about this, the 7th of October. I think I should do a video 7th of October, the untold story, and focus only on Hamas's military accomplishments on that day. Because everyone is constantly selling this lie. But this is, yeah, they're using that. They're actually using them. And imagine that being directly hit by a double warhead RPG created in Gaza, the Yasin 105 double head. The head to penetrate, the other head to bang when it penetrates. When it already roasted the Nimr. Imagine what's happening to them. Okay. Donal Lawson, what do you think of Saudi and Israel continuing normalization talks yesterday and today in the UAE? Anyone not only talking about normalization, anyone not cutting complete ties and putting all pressure possible on this genocidal satanic death cult to stop its massacre is doing something wrong. I'll tell you that. That's the straight answer that I can give you. FB, Salam Mahmoud, thank you for all you do. You're welcome. Is Israel's plan to continue attacking Lebanon part of their greater Israel plan? Netanyahu wants a Jewish version of the Ottoman Empire. Your thoughts? Very good question. Israel is undeniably a neo-colonialist expansionist state. They declared it from the beginning. If you read their ideas, their thoughts about Zionism and the greater Israel and Nile to the Euphrates, Nile Iraq, Nile Egypt, Euphrates Iraq, and then you talk about they implemented it, their implementation. Well, they went to Sinai. Why did they go to Sinai? Why did they go to almost Beirut, right? In Lebanon. Why? Why did they do that? And people need to understand, if they weren't forced out by armed resistance, by force, which is the only language that this state understands, force, they would have stayed there. The resistance in Lebanon forced them out. That's why they had this initial resistance from the 80s. Then they completed it in the year 2000, led by Hezbollah. And it's Egypt who expelled them from Sinai. Do you think if these countries didn't resist that Israel wouldn't already be in other places? Of course they would. They're an expansionist, neo-colonialist, supremacist state. They definitely have a plan. They definitely have a plan. That's why they want Hezbollah to move to the north of the Litani River, almost 40 kilometers away from the borders. Why? So no one can resist them in the south. If they declare tomorrow, oh, hey, it's our land. Oh, God promised us a piece of that too. Oh, he did promise us that. Oh, hey, God, what did you promise us as well? Did you promise us Cairo? Okay, we'll go to Cairo. They'll create these things. They'll tell you God promised us this and that, and we want to go everywhere in the world. And tell you we were promised it 5 million years ago when the dinosaurs were here, or something like that. So I wouldn't be surprised, right? But where is that from reality? Where is that from reality now? They're being humiliated with brave Palestinians in Gaza who hardly have anything. How are they going to survive in Lebanon? They can't. Even anyone with half a brain in Israel, there are some in the military and intelligence community and stuff like that, they will know. They tell you that we can't have two wars now. We're losing this war. We're not winning at least this war fully. Right? They'll tone it down by telling you we're winning 80% but not 100%. You're not winning anything. The only one winning is the Palestinian resistance, because you're not achieving any of your objectives of this war. You judge a war by reaching your objectives of the war. The objectives of the war were to demolish Hamas, wipe them off the face of the earth, that is one, and to bring the Israeli prisoners back. Fail, fail. Oh, three, Don't make Gaza a threat ever again. Another fail. How are you? You're failing in this war. The Palestinians are winning automatically because you failed and they forced you to fail. If I forced you to fail as a side, then I won because I forced you to fail. You had a plan, you failed, I won. Simple. That's how it is. Don't base it on the level of destruction. They want to manipulate the people by the level of destruction. Of course, you destroyed them. This is how you are. You're a coward army. So you destroy buildings and target people. But when it comes to head with men, with people on the ground, nothing. What are you going to do with Lebanon? What are you going to do with Lebanon? You know, Hezbollah's giving you teasers of what they can do. And you can't even stomach that teasing from them. Obviously, they would rather not drag Lebanon to war, but they're ready for it. And Israel further expanding its aggression and increasing the depth of attacks in Lebanon is creating more support for Hezbollah, by the way, and more sympathy with them. What are you doing? The whole world doesn't like you. You're going to be secluded. You are already a secluded state. You're a rogue state. You're a failed state. And you think you can go out, but you have arrogant, lunatic psychopaths in leading the country. So you really don't know what they. It wouldn't pass. It wouldn't surprise us if they go ahead and do any more stupidities and lunatic, delusional adventures. Kashmiri vlogs, how many Palestinian prisoners will be released for every hostage, Habibi? Although they'll still keep on arresting more days, so do not think they should stop arresting Palestinians in the West Bank. Interesting point that you made, because they arrested 6,000 in the West Bank. That's number one. People need to understand that. Over 6,000, that's there's a specific group that specializes in statistics with prisoners called Nadi al-Asir in Arabic, or like the party of prisoners, but it has a different really meaning. But anyway, this organization is focused on the prisoners. Over 6,000 in the West Bank since the 7th of October in prison, right? Apart from Palestinians in obviously Israel in 1948 territories. But that's number one. So you need to take them into consideration. They try and use it as leverage, but they will most likely fail when it comes to the negotiations. How many Palestinians will be released per one Israeli? Very interesting. If we want to take what Hamas said initially, which is whitening the Israeli prisons, this is what Hamas said. We want to clear the Israeli prisons. If you want to clear the Israeli prisons, the number that you started off with on the 7th of October is 6,000 or so prisoners, because it changes every day. Now you have a bit more. Some were released, some are headed back, some have administrative detention. They'll keep lots of them, they'll release some of them. Some were obviously released in the temporary ceasefire deal. If you want to base it on 134, which is the number of Israeli prisoners in Gaza, to 6,000, right? You're talking about approximately 1 per 60. Approximately. Now we had, there was talk about, but remember the number in the Palestinian and the Israeli prisons could be higher. However, if they would want to clear all of the, you're talking about 1 per 60. They initially said 1 per 100. 35 for 5,000 it was initially. Now Israel could have released this as a balloon or whatever, unless the meaning is we only have 35 Israeli civilian prisoners and the rest are army, which is very likely, 99 army personnel. And the 5,000 aren't the top 1,000 prisoners in terms of length of sentence, how long they've been, their political status, their importance politically, and their price, kind of, so to speak, right? Not to undermine any person in prison, anyone, even if they're not famous, you know, they should be released. But obviously Israel considers it a bigger defeat if heavy sentence prisoners are released. That's why the Gilad Shalit deal took 5 years to complete. The guy was kidnapped in 2006. The deal was implemented 2011. Hamas, until the last breath, tried to release Marwan al-Barghouthi, who is a leader in Fatah movement, but opposes Mahmoud Abbas to an extent. Israel doesn't want to reignite this resistance tone within Fatah-led West Bank. And you had Ahmad Sa'dad, the PFLP Secretary General, and you had Abdullah al-Barghouthi, who was Al-Qassam Brigade's military commander in the West Bank, and who has the longest sentence in Israel, over 6,000 years or so. So it would be that number. And the latest problem that we're having, that I also spoke about in my other video that I released earlier in more detail, is the fact that Netanyahu is adding conditions to the ceasefire deal. So he not only did he tell him off, the Mossad leader, he also was blamed by the delegation that he's now adding new conditions and he's making it difficult for his own political interests, which is obviously, we all know that by now. But it's reaching a level where his closest aides are saying that. Reach this level now. What is this condition? That the heavy sentence prisoners need to be expelled. Similar to what happened in 2011. Some of them did go to Turkey, to Qatar, etc. So now he wants to do it again. But the problem is, you didn't speak about it before. You don't want to just throw it in. Now, we're trying to reach a deal. It's taking so many months. People are losing lives. The country's in ruins. We're being punished economically. We're being secluded from the world. There's so much pressure on us. And you want to add this obstacle? So he was criticized for it. And now he has a delegation from the army and the Israeli Shabak, which is more of the interior intelligence, in Egypt. So I'm not sure now if he's going to ban the Mossad head from talking. He previously showed the distrust by sending one of his aides to monitor the Mossad head and what he says to make sure he follows him to the T. But that's what's happening with this. Obviously, Netanyahu is the biggest obstacle. Let's go to your next question. Okay. Imran Ali is asking, what will take for the Gulf people on the street to wake up from their luxurious lives and pressure their leaders into cutting ties or stopping normalization? I mean, the same argument can be implemented in every country that's not taking proper action or enough action, so to speak. When it comes to the Gulf states particularly, they have differences. You have different between, for example, Qatar and Kuwait and Oman, for example, to Saudi Arabia, right, and the UAE. It's not like they're all one and they're all the same. It's not the case. And it's not that people are not active, they have activity. but very, very limited in comparison to Western countries. Because, we talk about manipulation and propaganda and mainstream media and all of these things. You need to monitor the Gulf state propaganda and how it works. The thing is, for example, let's take Saudi Arabia, for example. Religion plays a big role. And obviously, in many countries where religion plays a big role, the religion we're talking about is the politically aligned religion. It's not the religion. It's the clerics, it's the clergy, right? It's the people ruling and are aligned with the ruler who will interpret religion based on what the ruler wants, who will come up with religious scripture sometimes based on what the ruler wants, who will interpret religion and religious texts based on what the ruler wants. And that's happened for thousands of years, and some people take that as a given nowadays. Like, one of these things is like, it's religiously impermissible. You're not allowed to, by religion, to revolt against any authority. Some people used to use that a lot in the Arab Spring days. If you believe that religiously, you're thinking, oh, hold on, I'm going against my religion here. There's a problem. So there's these obviously clerics that belong to the system, right? And they promote this version of religion, and people think it's religion because I'm following what the Imam said and what the Sheikh said and what have you said. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot of complication when it comes to this, and it's easier to manipulate people when religious is involved. That's why it's a very, very dangerous thing in Islam as a religion. Like, even, God warned about this in the Quran. ولا تقولوا لما تصف ألسنتكم الكذب هذا حلال وهذا حرام لتفتروا على الله الكذب. Do not say in what your tongues describe as lies. This is halal and this is haram. This is right and this is wrong. So you can lie in the name of God. And how many people do that nowadays? How many people talk about it? You have the clerics, you have people being free, left, right, and center, telling you this and that. And obviously it plays in people's minds. It plays in people, it fools them easily. They get controlled easily. And it plays a big role, particularly in Saudi Arabia. That's why people need to be very, very careful when it comes to this and with people who promote these things and these ideologies. Let's go to the next question. Donna's also asking, Ireland have voted for sanctions, but I don't know what these sanctions are. Me neither, right? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest with you, what they put it, but you need to bear in mind one thing. So many countries are submitting so many additional things to the ICJ. I mean, what South Africa's done is they created a momentum. They created a wave of further action against Israel. And so far, they're only talking about genocide, by the way. Like, we haven't reached other stages of occupation, taking them for the occupation of Palestine, right? Taking them for the historical injustice. How about we take them for the refugees then to the ICJ? Can you imagine how this can turn into something much, much bigger? And yes, although this ICJ case did not stop Israel from committing the genocide, didn't stop it from continuing. They killed over 3,000 people they massacred since this ruling. But it did scare off other countries. It did seclude Israel. It made them a more secluded country, and it made them unappealing. Israel is no longer appealing. Imagine if to say Israel to anyone. Like if you speak with Israelis, to them it's unappealing. People who were born there, it's unappealing to them. How is it going to be appealing to a foreigner who wants to, for example, invest or sell something or have a startup, right? Israel is a nation that's very heavy on startups. You have lots of startups and high-tech startups in Israel. How are people gonna trust them now and make deals with them, with all of these startups, right? It's unappealing and it's creating a ball. So whatever Ireland did, it wouldn't be the only country. It won't be the last country, in my opinion. Okay, if we have any more questions, if you don't mind dropping them before we wrap up. Okay, Beverly West, interesting question. Obviously, if anyone has any more, drop them below before I finish up, because I will finish with this one if you don't have any more questions. Beverly is asking, Beverly West, why is speaking against Jews anti-Semitism, but speak against Muslims Islamophobia? Muslims are Semites as well. Very interesting notion. I would start off by, and we spoke about this, but obviously I'll highlight it as well. Speaking about anti-Semitism as a term. Anti-Semitism as a term started to be commonly used in the beginning of the 20th century, after the establishment of Zionism. There's a correlation. Anything against Jews, anti-Judaism should be, or hatred of Jews, like it is with hatred of Muslims, or hatred of Christians, or, right? Because you're hating them for their religion. So the Zionist movement, what was their aim? Is to make Judaism an ethnicity, not a religion. They started gathering everyone, telling them you're Jewish by ethnicity, not by religion. They started talking about anti-Semitism to criminalize, and obviously criminalize the criticism of Israel and weaponize anti-Semitism. Then, because they made them a race, any criticism of their state, of them as a nation, is anti-them. Secondly, you'll go down to the term Semitism. Semitism, it can have two references, right? Sam, one of the sons of Noah, if I'm not mistaken, peace be upon him. And then you have Sham, which is the Levant area. It's commonly referred to as Asham in Arabic, the Levant area, which consists of Palestine, parts of Lebanon, Syria, small parts of Jordan, potentially in some parts of history, what is modern day, very, very northeast Egypt. That is Asham. So not all Muslims are Semites. Some are Semites, but some Jews are Semites, right? But which Jews? Jews who are native to the land. Like if you take, for example, it's easy to have an argument that, for example, the Samaritans are Semites, the Shomronim. Jews who have historically lived in Palestine pre-Zionism, okay? Obviously, any native, the descendants of the Canaanites, right? Al-Kan'aniyun, who were there before both of them. Semites, some of the Christians, obviously, because Christianity was there before Islam. They would be Semites too. But telling me that someone coming from all sorts of the world, right? And you're telling me you're a Semite coming post World War II from Europe. What do you have to do with Semitism as a? So two things to note here. Number one, the term, I would personally say anti-Jewish. We're obviously against any form of racial, religious discrimination against anyone. And we constantly highlight that it's Israel who's trying to push us into anti-Judaism, right? And we won't fall for it. This is what they want because this is what they sell, and this couldn't be further away from the truth, by the way. And then you have the term itself, the interpretation of the term, and you also have the Semitism as a race itself. And if you look at it really, there's a lot of talk about anti-Semitism. Why? To deter people from speaking up against Israel. There are some things in history like Aranono. It's like you can't go back to World War II and think for a second about everything that we've been told, because it's the powerful who writes history. And think about it now. Think about how much you're being lied to now, and how way easier it was to lie to you and write history when there was no immediate social media and news needed months to pass from one place to another at a certain point. So I hope that elaborates. Mariam Masoud by Kate, question: what is the end game, Qatar's end game for Palestinians? Qatar try and play, have been already for a very long time now, trying to play a game of being okay with the West for money, but still not, and money and interest, obviously, and everything, but being with the Palestinians. And I mean, a big highlight of that is Al Jazeera. Look at Al Jazeera, for example. Al Jazeera is funded by the Qatari government. Look at how they played it. So they started having offices in Israel, limited to what they can do and what can they report. And we knew people who work for Al Jazeera in Israel, and they tell you things as they are. There's very, very many limits to what they can do. We saw how Israel restricts many things. But how did they play it? I'll be in Israel, right? I'll show their side to the world, but I'll also show the Palestinian side that I believe in to the world. So people had two arguments with this type of foreign policy, right? And media, in many cases, is foreign policy. Some people started to argue, hold on a second, you're bringing to my living room a racist Zionist to talk to me and demonize someone. You're bringing him to my living room. How dare you? You're a big traitor. And then you had other people saying, but hold on a second. They're calling what the Palestinians do resistance, not terrorism, not the norm, right? They're constantly bringing leaders that the other side doesn't like. So what are they trying to do? In my opinion, they're trying to serve their interests by having communication with everyone, and at the same time not losing sight of some of the moral cases in obviously the Arab and Muslim world. And Palestine is one of the main things in the Arab and Muslim world, because you have Al-Aqsa, you have an occupied land, ongoing occupation, the last neo-colonial entity. And look, think about it this way: both sides are dealing with them. So the Israelis deal with them, and Hamas deal with them. Hamas's offices are there. Israel can get riled up and upset with them, but at the end of the day, they know that they are the go-to people when we want to reach deals, right? Because things are probably too tense for them to sit down with Hamas, even though I argue that go and sit down with Hamas. What's the problem? Go and sit down with your biggest opponent, with people who you've been fighting for all of this time, and try and see if something happens. You know what I mean? You don't just speak to your friends, right? But that's obviously how both sides see it, and there's an argument that now it's almost impossible for both of them to see because of how tense it is. But still, like me personally, I think Israel should sit down with Hamas, and Hamas should sit down with them as long as there's something to give and take, right? It might be, quite out of the question, obviously, or not very realistic and implementable now. But at some point, look, they sat with Arafat previously. They sat with people who killed them previously. Hamas members who were in prison, they were interviewing them in their mainstream media. Israel, Yahya Sinwar, they had many interviews with him when he was the person who they want killed now. And that they knew how his mentality was when he was in prison. Do you understand? So you talk with your worst enemies. You talk to try and reach something. And why not talk in public too? Why not? Like if you ask me, well, talk in public, make it an open discussion. Let's see what you both have to say. Let's see who's reasonable and who's not. Obviously, people already make their mind up who's right and who's wrong. No one can argue. But it would obviously take it to the next level. Okay, Omar Zaqut is asking, do you know any resources which dismantle the claims that Hummus massacre website? An Israeli acquaintance of mine sent me the website as irrefutable proof. Is there a website or video counter? Look, if you go on YouTube, actually, and many other websites, if try and type it in Arabic, right? Or on Al Qassam's website, right? They have all of the videos from the 7th of October. You will see them. See every single video and the body cam. You will see where they were, who they attacked, who they shot, who they killed, and how they killed them. They killed civilians on the 7th of October. It's not that they didn't. When we talk about we talk about the massacres, the mass killings. The images that I saw, and you can obviously go and see them. You don't want to just rely on what I'm telling you here. The images that we saw of them killing civilians were in cases where some of these civilians who were adult males, not to justify killing any civilian, by the way, they were holding them as prisoners, and they were running away. One of them was running away to a car, for example. The argument that could be made for that is this guy is going to get a weapon and shoot me, right? Again, not to justify killing of any innocent civilian whatsoever. Hamas did kill civilians on the 7th of October. However, they didn't commit the mass killings on the 7th of October. Was their intention to go on a mass killing spree? This is the question here, because the argument is Hamas want to kill all of the Jews. That's number one, which is obviously complete facade, lies. Their charter even clarifies that. I spoke about it. 16, 17 clauses of their charter, saying our problem with Zionism, occupying aggressive Zionism, not with Jews as a people. So that's that. Secondly, when you talk about, let's say they wanted to come in and massacre. Okay, so number one, you have Israeli proof released that they killed the revelers in the Nova Festival from the helicopters. Everyone saw that. You basic research, you see it. Then you have the tank in Kibbutz Be'eri shooting at Israeli houses. You have that, seen it, published in Israeli media. Multiple Israeli witnesses who survived the 7th of October saying most people were killed because of our forces shooting at us when we were held with Hamas. Hamas members were reassuring us, we're not here to hurt you, we're not here to kill you, we're believers, we believe in the Quran and all sorts of stuff. all of these things. However, we also saw killing of civilians, absolutely. The cases that I saw when they were running away from them, when they were holding them, two of them, there were also a couple of cases of them shooting at civilian cars again. In the two cases, and again, don't take it as me trying to justify any killing of civilians here. So let that be very clear. We're against killing any civilians. To them, from their perspective, the person who was fleeing could have gotten a weapon, shot them, killed them, because Israel is an armed society in general. And you saw how much they're promoting selling weapons and arms. Secondly, a car coming towards them, right? Anyone can be in that car. These were the cases that we saw Hamas killing people who were deemed to be civilians. They weren't wearing gear. We didn't see a weapon coming out of them or anything. That is it. And obviously, again, we reiterate, we're against killing any civilians. As a matter of fact, if you ask me, in my essence, I'm an anti-war person. I wish we could reach a stage where there's no wars and we reach everything diplomatically and in peace. You know, it's within human potential to reach that. Might seem utopic, but we can, hopefully, one day, if we keep talking about it and promoting that instead of hate and killing and massacres and revenge and ugliness. We don't want that, right? We want peace. But when it comes to the 7th of October, because obviously it's a very important topic, it's the live thing, but and that is it really. That if you want these videos, they can go directly to their website, check it, or from some of the people who quoted them. Also, if some Israeli networks, because on the day I was, monitoring, and after that, Israeli media, Arab media, Western media. Obviously, Western media, they try and brainwash you and make you feel as if nothing's happened, just manipulate you and shut you up. And scare you, obviously. That's their aim. So don't rely on anything when it comes to Western media. It's like the worst thing in the world is Western mainstream media when it comes to this. Israeli news, bad, but still you can see some hard evidence, right? Arab news outlets, they'll post most things. But when it comes to some of the Israeli networks, they published evidence from, not only from their body cams and stuff, from cameras that were there in the Israeli towns. That you didn't see that initially, but then some of the Arab networks started to publish them. Okay, let's see if we have any more questions before we wrap up. Rock Black, thank you. Very interesting question. Why do Palestinians not accept the one state of Israel and immediately become the majority citizens? Then they can vote like in a democracy. It's because Israel won't allow them in. So Israel wants to control all of the area militarily without giving the equal rights. Do you understand? Otherwise, it's a great argument, right? Because then you can, it's democracy. You can change the laws, you can shape things, you can do stuff. Israel knows that. They don't want it. So they want control, but without responsibility. They want control without obligation. So they want to manage the conflict. Semi-state, half-state, but we're not in charge of you, right? This is what they want. And they constantly try and expel more and more Palestinians. So number one, they won't let them in. Number two, so any refugees, they won't let them in, obviously, okay? And they have never offered the Palestinians come and get full rights in Israel. Otherwise, most of them would obviously accept. Secondly, they won't give equal rights to Palestinian citizens of Israel. Like, for example, there's a majority Palestinian party who was in the Israeli Knesset for many years that used to call every year for a law to be implemented, which calls for a country for all its citizens. Anyone in any country. Like, imagine if you're in any like normal functioning country, right? Functioning system stuff, asking for someone to ask, I want my country to be for all the citizens. Well, it's for all the citizens anyway, right? No, not in Israel. They're always rejected. It doesn't even get debated in the Israeli Knesset because Israel is not for all its citizens. It's for its Jewish citizens, right? It has the nation state law. It is the country for the Jewish people, right? Not the Palestinians, not the Arabs, not the Christians, not even the Druze who are in very strategic partnership with them and serve in the military and fall under the conscription rules that Israel has. So it's very interesting, but that's the reality that we obviously try to fight and debunk, really. Dismantle this racist based ideology and actually implement equality. You'll solve it. Because look, let me tell you another thing here. I know some people might not like that. Me personally, I'm not this nationalist person. Right? I don't care that much about nationality. I have my faith, right? My religion. I have my principles that I follow in life. I like equality of rights for everyone. I don't, it's not like you take pride, but you're forced to when someone's trying to eliminate you and ethnically cleanse you. So if someone comes to tell me, hold on, there's no Palestinian people. No, there is Palestinian people. And do you know what? I am Palestinian too, because I'm a descendant of Palestinian. And we've been here and you came and you forced us out. But let's say for argument's sake, Israel came, right? So you had people, refugees from Europe. They came, they merged into society, right? Not enforced themselves on society and expelled people. Merged into society. Countries started to have a different shape. You had people from all walks of life, all religions, working together in harmony, no one over the other, right? Collaborating, right? This is how you make things develop even further. And they called the country, I don't know, Canaan or Honolulu, whatever it is. Would anyone really care that much? Seriously, not many people would care. Not many people would care if you had equality of rights. Equality of rights. You might have political debates, you might have the people who are calling for historical name implementation, this and that, but it wouldn't be this massive big issue. Wouldn't be this massive big issue because you have equality of rights and the rights are more important than the names. Okay? But that's why Israel will never accept it, because they're an ethno-religious supremacy. They're an ethnocracy. That's what they are. They will never accept such a thing. And to them, some of them will call people who call for the one-state solution people who are calling for the elimination of Israel, as if they want to end this and they're against the Jewish people and they're against. You know what I mean? They still like to revive this paranoia always, because this is how they control their people, by this fear, this ongoing fear. Everyone wants to kill you. We're only protecting ourselves. I'm sorry, but every Jew living anywhere apart from Israel is safer than Israel. Israel is the worst thing that happened for the Jewish people. And they still try and sell this idea and narrative for the Israeli public that, you know, everyone hates us because of our religion. And they go and chop people in the name of religion, by the way. It's like who's doing the image of religion a favor or not, right? Me or you? Quoting stuff from the Bible and saying you are the Jewish state and I am the Jewish state and it's only the Jewish people, and going killing 30,000 people. Am I giving a bad image to Jewish people, or are you giving a bad image to Jewish people? And that's why many Jewish people say what I'm saying, right? You'll see Orthodox Jews saying that. Many secular Jewish people will say that too. It's like having any kind of rogue cult within Christianity or Islam or whatever ideology or religion, going and speaking on behalf of religion and killing people. Who's giving the religion a bad image? But again, We need to be bigger than that. We need to be bigger than and understand that you can't just simply go and target the religion. Similar to how we wouldn't target Islam as a religion because of some rogue groups or twisted ideology groups, right? Or Christians for Bush calling the war in Iraq a crusade war. Do we go and say, oh, he represents Christianity? No, delusional people talking again on behalf of religion. Because when you talk on behalf of religion, it's easy to manipulate people. Let's be frank. And it's always used as a political tool with some of these religious entities that constantly talk on behalf of the religion. Okay. Okay, let's see if we have any more questions before we wrap up. Kwame saying, I heard that they teach college kids in college how to manipulate the history of Israel to their favor, just like a math major. There is a department on how manipulating the media is done. Like they have many departments to manipulate and debunk. Like one of the most common ones is the Hasbara. Now it's bigger than one organization. It's referred to as the Hasbara. There's an office for Hasbara that had a name change throughout the years that belongs to the Israeli government, but it's a multi-level organization and attempt in Israel that has many departments working. They have war rooms in Israel, right? War rooms on social media, monitoring news, monitoring intellectual, monitoring lots of stuff, trying to counter it by bots, by directly. They have their own people that they buy with money. They have all of these things, so they work a lot, and that's only some of it. What you've mentioned in terms of twisting the history as well. Nasser Ghannam, if all Israeli adults are reservists, are they really civilians? That's another question. Like you have people who will tell you all of Gaza's collateral damage, babies, children, and all of Israelis are civilians. When so many of them are armed and are reservists, right? And now you even have more and more calls to arm the people. Okay, so I hope we looks like we ended with the most relevant questions here. Okay, let's call it there then. Thank you so much for everyone who participated and everyone joining us regularly on this live stream. Thank you to my moderators. You're doing a great job making sure everything's okay. Obviously, a reminder for everyone, if you haven't watched my other video, you can watch it with a bit more details that I published earlier on. We have this live stream regularly Now I'm doing it at 9:30. I used to do it at 10. 10 is a tad bit too late. Now I'm doing it at 9:30. So the regular theme now is 9:30. If the time changes, I would obviously inform you accordingly, and you will see it from whenever I publish the link to the live stream. So, but now, for now, I'm doing it at 9:30 in general, and this is obviously just like we did now. Share the views, questions, share some of your thoughts as well, and answer any potential questions that you have. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will hopefully see you soon in the next video, hopefully tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day, evening, and morning, depending on where you are, and hopefully see you tomorrow in the next video. Take care.